Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today is Thursday, December 7th, 2023. It's exactly 1:14 p.m. in the afternoon. And I'd like to call this meeting this afternoon under the SNILD JGO Committee to order. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Rep Denita yang Kaipat yang Atmai,
Nyangi,
Rep Marissa R. Flores,
present.
Rep Vicente C. Komatsu,
Present.
Rep Diego Vincent F. Komatsu,
Present.
Rep Blas Jonathan BJ T. Atto,
Present.
Senator Karina L. Magofnia,
Gaya.
Senator Edith E. De Leon Guerrero.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have 7 present.
Thank you. There's 7 members present and pursuant to Rule 4 under the attendance and quorum, Section 2 of the SNIL delegation rules, we have established the necessary number of attendees for this session to conduct our business. We have established the quorum numbers as required for 3. Moving on, may I hear a motion on item number 3 for the adoption of this afternoon's agenda? There's a motion to adopt this afternoon's agenda and has been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Nays, this afternoon's agenda is hereby adopted. Moving on to item 4 under public comments. We are now open for public comments on the agenda item, which is to hear the renomination of Mr. Jose B. Palacios for the Cannabis Commission. Please state your name. And if you have a written copy, to hand it over to the Sergeant at Arms so we could make it part of the record for this afternoon session.
Good afternoon, half a day, Antiro Chairwoman Edith De Leon Guerrero, and honorable members of the Judiciary and Governmental Operations Committee under the Saipan and Northern Islands Legislative Delegation. For the record, my name is Paul B. Regis, Special Projects Coordinator under the Office of the Governor. On behalf of Honorable Governor Arnold Y. Palacios and Honorable Lieutenant Governor David M. Aptang, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am here to introduce the Governor's nominee for the Sinamay Cannabis Commission, Mr. Jose B. Palacios. Mr. Palacios has over 45 years of experience in public and private sectors. He has a diverse background, having served in the U.S. Army as well as in various law enforcement agencies. Mr. Palacios worked for the Guam Police Department and collaborated with several agencies, including the U.S. Attorney's Office on Organized Crime, Drug Enforcement Task Force, U.S. Customs, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the U.S. Immigration Naturalization Services. He received various awards during his tenure, such as the GPD Meritorious Service Medal and the GPD Unit Citation for Excellence. He was a 4-time finalist for Police Officer of the Year, where he was also recognized for the Guam Legislature Committee on Public Safety for his valor, courage, and honor. He then served as the Deputy Director for the Department of Corrections in Guam, the Special Assistant for former Guam Lieutenant Governor Michael W. Cruz, and was later promoted to become the Director of the Department of Corrections. Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor Aptang have expressed their complete trust and confidence in Mr. Jose Palacios' renomination to the Sinamay Cannabis Commission. With his extensive professional experience, credentials, and commitment to serving the Commonwealth in this capacity, we kindly request for your favorable consideration on this nomination. At this time, I'm sure he is prepared to answer any questions you have and present his plans for the future. Thank you, Jesus Mosi Zangiliso, for the opportunity to introduce him to this august body.
Thank you, Mr. Regis, for your comments. We are still open for public comments. Please proceed to the microphone and state your name and the entity that you are representing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Edith Dilongero and the body that's here today for this hearing. My name is Rebecca Palacios Cruz, and I'm just gonna just make it short that I just wanna echo what Mr. Paul Regis just mentioned in regards to Mr. Jose Borja Palacios' background. I want to say thank you for the months that he served probably 5 months, and I believe that he was just within the short time that he was there as the Cannabis Commission, that I think he did really good. So I'm asking your vote of confidence again for each and every one of you today, to give him that opportunity again to continue what he's doing, and I guess I believe for the betterment of the cinema and for everyone here. Sister Smase, thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Mrs. Cruz, for your comment. Anybody else that would like to make a public comment? Please state your name and the entity you are representing. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Natasha, and I'm the Executive Secretary at the CNMI Cannabis Commission. Hafade Zantiro Neponganim, Chairwoman and members. I am writing this letter in support of the reappointment of Jose B. Palacios to the position of the CNMI Cannabis Commissioner. As someone who works with him, I have witnessed his dedication and unwavering commitment to the CNMI Cannabis Commission. Throughout Mr. Palacios' time serving on the board, he has displayed strong leadership qualities and a firm dedication to the commission. He has been a constant presence, actively participating in board meetings and engaging in discussions. In conclusion, I fully support the reappointment of Mr. Palacios as CNMI Cannabis Commissioner. He is an asset to the commission and industry. I believe with his headstrong leadership, unwavering support, and consistent presence will only enhance the effectiveness of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palacios, for your comments. You may give your written statement to our Sergeant at Arms so that we could make that part of our records. Anybody else that would like to make a comment? Let the record reflect that we also received supporting letters for the nominee from Mr. Aniceto T. Ogumero. He's the police director for the Sinamay Department of Public Safety. We also received a letter in support of the nominee from Mr. Eric O. Basa, and also from Mikioti Evangelista in support of the nominee as well. Any other comments from the public? None? We are officially closing this section of our agenda under item 4. And for the viewing public, we are live on cable TV channel 23 and also live on the Sinamay Legislature's YouTube channel, which will be shared on the Sinamay Legislature's Facebook page. And assisting us this afternoon is our Senate Legal Counsel, Antoinette Villagomez, our Legislative Assistant for the Senate, Clarissa Sablan, and Nick Rebalman are actually providing us assistance from the House side. Our IT Manager, IT Assistant, Jonathan Diaz and Delbert Camacho, and also our Sergeant at Arms, Benjamin Terlahi and Brendan Manglonia. Thank you all for assisting us this afternoon. At this time, we're going to move into item number 5, where we'll invite the nominee, Mr. Osebi Palacios, to please come up. And it's a standard procedure that we administer the oath to the nominee. If you remain standing and raise your right hand, and clerk, please administer the oath.
Mr. Jose B. Palacios, you do solemnly swear, under the penalty of perjury, that the testimony you shall give in the matter at hand shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Be seated.
Thank you. At this time, Mr. Palacios, you are open to deliver your brief remarks before the committee members. And from there, we will open into item 6 for discussion with your presence this afternoon. You may proceed.
Buenas and Hafide. Good afternoon, Terao. Thank you, Jesus Masi and Gilisao, for your time. To the governor, lieutenant governor, the administration, to my family, my friends, and most especially to the CNMI public for their confidence and support continued in this endeavor. Um, it's been a opportunity more than a challenge. Accepting the first nomination and being nominated as the chair, and moving the industry forward. We've accomplished a lot. There's still a lot of work, and with the guidance and support of not only the administrations as far as its policy direction, but also from this body. We talk to Congressman Diego Camacho as often as we can, who is our oversight chair. We also solicit advice and assistance from former Speaker BJ Atto, Senator Karina Magofnia, Congressman Vicente Sablan. Um, I know that we've reached out. Sablan, I'm sorry, Camacho. My apologies, sir. And I know that we've also reached out to the office of Congresswoman Marissa Flores, as well as Congresswoman Dinita Yamangatay, and of course the Senate President on some matters that would require the amendments, if you will, of 2066, which is the enabling legislation, to further uh, grow responsibly a sustainable economy, which is the cannabis through the Cannabis Commission. We're talking about an industry that is basically composed of three active or four active producer licensees. A total of, I believe, between 5 and 6 have been issued. Retailers, I believe the number is 4 or 5 also. Uh, a- Two lounges and a processor. Yet they employ anywhere from 37 to 42 people full time. These are our local people that they employ full time. An industry that has generated, and this number coming directly from the Treasury's office, as well as the Mr. Richard Santos, I believe is his last name, at Revenue Tax Collection, has generated economic activity to the tune of 1.2 to 1.3 million dollars annually. We're not counting or even talking about incidentals such as payrolls, office expenses, rentals, and so forth, CUC payments and whatnot. Is there growth? Yes, there is. The fluidity of the industry as a whole, we're always mindful and keep track of what the federal government is doing. Currently, 2 months ago, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra, along with U.S. Attorney Garrick Merlin Garrick, rather, or Garlic Merlin, and issued a recommendation to the head of the Drug Enforcement Administrator, Ann Milligan or Milgram. And basically, they're recommending that marijuana be rescheduled from a Schedule 1 down to a Schedule 3. Schedule 1 is described as high potential for abuse with no medical application. Schedule 3, on the other hand, is described as low potential of abuse with accepted medical applications. What that means for the industry is it's going to open up a door where right now we're looking based on just the information from the industry locally is we'll be probably reaching the $5-7 million mark annually 3-4 years down the road. Should DEA reschedule it, now we're looking into the possibility of in the excess of 10 million annually, because then it opens up the market. In other words, we can now ship our cannabis products just like you ship Tylenol with codeine. You can carry it on a plane. So it opens up that very, very potential market for growth. Guam, if again keeping track of things, now they're trying to mirror what the CNMI legislation is, because their legislation was so restrictive that before you sell anything at all, it has to go through a laboratory. But yet the laboratory investors are saying, I'm not going to spend $750,000 to open a lab when I'm not going to see my first customer until 6 months down the road. With the lab provision in place, it still makes it where the CNMI's product is still way, way cheaper for people from Guam to come here, buy an ounce of cannabis products, put it in their luggage, go through customs and TSA, and consume it in Guam. So the potential is there for this growth. It is there. We have put in place other mechanisms, or rather other policies that we have adopted to expand the industry. And I said that in my first hearing. What we've done is we've implemented a policy based on the enabling legislation and the subsequent amendment legislation, which is 2105, where the commission can decrease the fees no more than 25%. So what we did was we locked in the fees as is for Saipan, because Saipan is where the industry is at. It's not in Rhoda, it's not in Tinian, it's not in the Northern Islands. So how do we get it out there? We decrease the fees. So now if you're going to open up a shop in Rhoda, it'll be 25% cheaper than it would be here from Saipan. That then incentivizes even the current licensees in Saipan, that if they want something cheaper as far as operation and cost, they can do it in Rhoda. Because to allow it in Saipan, then they have no incentive to go to Rhoda and expand the industry. Understanding that the industry, as it's currently regulated on the federal side, it's literally a captive market. Populations in Rhoda, Tinian, cannot sustain the kind of license requirements in order for you to get your license. Plus, it's just way too it's not cost efficient. So we're now looking at reaching out to the legislature to amend the law to say that these three jurisdictions, the municipality of the Northern Islands, Tinian, and Rhoda, can now have micro producers. So now we create a collective or a cooperative, if you will. I go to Rhoda, I open up a retail shop, and I get 6 of my friends to plant 25 marijuana plants, because that's the limit. Now you have some kind of an industry growing. The market in Rhoda is roughly estimated between 350 consumers that we can rely on. Tinian is even smaller. So we have to be mindful that we're dealing with a captive, literally a captive market. All these things can change, of course, with the rescheduling. We've also put a pause on producer license here in Saipan. And the reason why we did that is one of the things that killed a lot of the industries in the stateside was overproduction. Because everybody wants to grow because they only pay one time, which is the license fee. So we put a pause on that. And by doing that, we ensure that all these products that the current licensees are producing are not sitting on the shelf and we're not forcing these licensees to go and sell it in the black market just so that they can recover their business costs. Again, those are some of the policies that we've adopted. On the administrative side, logistically, we put together an address, because it's required, again, in the legislation, that we hire a managing director. Position has been vacant since, I believe, April of 2022. We recently hired one effective October 1st of this year. That process went through the merit system. Certification with OPM and vetting by the commissioners. After the vetting was done, a vote amongst the commissioners was then taken. So it went through a process where it wasn't just, let's just hire Pari or Mali or whatever. No, it didn't go that way. It went through the vetting process. So those are some of the other things that we're changing. And having, understanding, having the public understand that you can look at it and say, well, it's only generating $1.2 million a year. Granted, to me, I look at it as that's 37 people that are employed, that are not lining up in a SLITO every time food stamps comes out. That's 37 people that are not wondering how they're going to feed their families for that day. That's 37 people that are not breaking into my house because they're employed. You take one of the licensees, they pay about $80,000 to $90,000 annually to CUC. And you can say, how does that benefit the public? It benefits the public because that one customer that CUC now has, paying $80,000 to $90,000 a year, ensures the employment of at least 2 linemen that can come to your aid or after a typhoon to get your power back on. So all these incidentals, if you look at it, we use the same matrix that MVA uses. For every dollar that's spent in the industry, it creates and generates $1.62. So if you take currently, depending on who you talk to, we are currently sitting on our special accounts, 1501B and 1501S. We're currently sitting at $471,000. That's in our special account. If you talk to somebody at the Treasury, they'll tell you that with the inclusion of 1501C at $692,000, the CNMI Commission is currently sitting at anywhere from $471,000 to $1.16 million. The way we want to spend that money is to use it to totally and fully fund our office. Everything from lights to personnel to everything. And then transfer the excess to other agencies that need it. Maybe the Tinian Aging Center so they can pay their power.
Thank you, Mr. Palacios. I don't want to interrupt you on your ongoing statement, but hold your thought. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to move into item 6 of the agenda under discussion, where I will open the floor to the members to ask questions from you. You're sharing a lot of information, and perhaps maybe some of those questions that the members may have, you're already answering them. And so at this time, members, we're going to move into item 6 for discussion with the nominee, and I would like to open the floor to any member that would like to engage. I recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
Thank you, Madam President. Welcome again. Question for you. Has there been any incident within the general public and within the cannabis industry that you know of?
Congressman, if you don't mind, sir, what incident as in?
Incident as in maybe criminal acts, incidents with the youths?
As far as we know, on our collaboration with DPS and the directors here to rebut that or to correct if I should misspeak, because of the legalization of marijuana in the CNMI, the enforcement part of it really has not been a priority. As far as any licensees being shut down for selling to minors, selling illegally for that matter, there has been none.
Thank you for that. I yield for now.
Thank you, Representative Camacho. Any other members that would like to engage conversation with the nominee? Recognize Senator Karina Magofnia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Palacios, welcome. Good afternoon to everyone who are here in the chamber. Mr. Palacios, in the several months that you have served at the Sinai Cannabis Commission, what were your short-term goals and what were the outcomes of those goals?
The short-term goals were, again, to stabilize the industry, address the backlog of applications that were issued, or rather that were pending, I'm sorry. And also be mindful that we're dealing with an industry that's very fragile, so that we don't create policies that constrict it, but rather look at policies that can enhance its growth and also protect the industry as it is. What is the industry as it is right now? Because again, currently the industry as it is right now here in Saipan, again, the most very basic fundamental created 37 to 42 jobs full-time for our people. And that's not counting the taxes and the BGRTs and everything else. We've stabilized that. We've addressed some of the mandated requirements under 2066. Some of them basically said that we had 60 days from the enactment, and of course, going in, the mindset was in accepting the chairmanship nomination was that we're not going to point fingers, we're not going to blame the previous and blah blah blah. We're here now. We're the Cannabis Commission, and we're here now. We're going to own everything, and we're going to fix what needs to be fixed. And those things that are hard to fix, we're going to look for ways to find out how can we fix it. Those things that should not have been in place, one of them is a process that they use that they call IAP, okay, or AIP rather, approval in principle. And we had a discussion with legal counsel, and we stopped it. And the reason why we stopped it was it gives a false misrepresentation that an applicant was going to be approved. Therefore, you have people that had received those AIPs coming in and saying, well, I already spent $500,000, so you guys have to approve me. But the backside of that is, but if we approve you, we're going to kill the industry, because now we're going to create overproduction. Now we're going to, so it's almost one of the applicants actually had an issue with the pausing of the producer license, and my response to him was, the reason why we have this pause in the producer license is for the same reason why your family doesn't have 2 stores in Cagman. And I don't need to say a name. In other words, you don't create something to kill something that you already have, hoping that what you create is going to be something better. So that's our mindset, and that has been the policy direction. We've accomplished that. There was one that had an AIP that was up for a 3rd-year extension. If you're not ready when you submitted your application, then you're not going to hold this industry back by occupying a slot. So we started closing those and not renewing them, and those were just some of the short-term things that we've accomplished.
Thank you for that clarification. And in addition to that, so should you be confirmed, what do you hope to achieve for your long-term goals?
Well, I've shared it with the committee, and I've shared it both openly in public and in private, that at some point I've shared it with the staff, most especially the other commissioners. At some point, with the fluidity of the federal laws, as we speak, the current Senate Majority Leader, Senator Chuck Schumer from the U.S. Senate, is already starting the discussion for a national legalization. That was emphasized even, or rather expounded even more, with the recent midterm elections in Ohio and Michigan, where 70% of the voters approved the legalization of cannabis use for recreation. So there's a lot of dynamics that are taking place. And we're looking at all of these and planning the possibilities that in the event this market should open, now we can invite and start doing these productions. If it means reducing the fees for the production, right now we can do it without legislative approval up to no more than 25%. But if we need to go above that, then we'll come to the legislature and ask to go above that. If it means so that we can issue processor licensee so they can process these products and make shampoo, soap, and powder. And currently we have one processor, and one of the first products that he started selling was cannabis infused coconut oil. And it wasn't surprised, but it was funny when we were talking about it because his biggest customers were the Manongko. And so again, in looking at that, it's not just the captive market that we have, but how can we export this? There was a group that came before I believe before this body, or members of this body from out of Long Beach, and I've had a conversation with some of the people that were planning the trip, and I made it clear to them that right now, as it stands, we will allow you a producer license in Rhoda, conditional that you don't sell none of your products here in the CNMI. And we pick Rhoda so that it can also help with the growth of your export. Their export target market is Thailand. A lot of people tend to think that Southeast Asia has a lot of marijuana, which they do. But the quality of their marijuana is very, very low. So they're looking for the Cadillac of marijuana, which is US grown marijuana. By having it in Rhoda, we're helping this industry, giving it a chance to grow, bringing you to closer proximity to the transportation hub, which is Guam, for international distribution. So these are all the things that we're looking forward to in the event these things take place.
Thank you for that. And I'm glad you brought up the idea and the concept of exporting, because it sounds like there is some sort of plan to expand maybe into a hemp industry, right? Where we take some, I don't know how it all works, but I know that there are lotions out there that are made out of, a byproduct of cannabis. And so this is kind of exciting news to hear that we are thinking beyond what we have right now and trying to see how we can expand. And just one more question. So you talked a little bit about enforcement, and I didn't quite catch what you were saying about the enforcement. So can you elaborate on that? Because I could have sworn I heard you said there right now we're lacking maybe enforcement. I don't know if I misheard you, but if you could elaborate, please.
We're lacking enforcement as far as the cannabis industry. And again, as far as Department of Public Safety, it's not prioritized, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's also the federal mindset. That goes back to the initial, if you will, allowing use of marijuana with the directive from then President Barack Obama to deprioritize the enforcement of marijuana-related investigations. So it started from there, and again, it's not unique to Saipan. It's not a bad thing. Enforcement on our part, again, prior to our arrival, and I want to thank Ms. Natasha Palacios and Mr. Eric Baza, because for a whole year prior to our arrival, they basically were the Cannabis Commission. Everything from administrative, inspection, processing, approval, everything. And they kept the ship going. And I thank them for that. And I always remind them that, I'm thankful. I'm grateful and thankful for the other three commissioners, Commissioner Hofschneider from Tinian, Commissioner Song Song from Rhoda, and Commissioner Igbo from the Northern Islands, for sharing their vision, their ideas, because I made it clear, I do not have a monopoly on good ideas. Share your ideas. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. And then let's vote on it. And that's what we've been doing. So we've been able to accomplish a lot of things by having these discussions amongst, not just amongst ourselves, but even to stakeholders. Understanding that not every decision that we make is going to be the flavor of the month. And I'm preaching to the choir with that statement. You honorable members of this body understand that more than me. That we're going to make decisions that at some point, to one person or another, it's not going to be a popular decision. But the one thing I learned in management is the toughest decision I'm going to make every day is, am I going to make the right decision or am I going to make the good decision? And there's a big difference between the two. And that's the toughest decision that I make as the chairman every day.
Thank you for your answer. I yield, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Magofnia. I now recognize Representative Marissa Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome back, Mr. Palacios. It's nice to see you again. It's been quite some time. So I just got 3 areas, Madam Chair, and my first one is you did give us the total number of licenses that are currently registered and legal in the Commonwealth. 4 production, 5 retailers, I guess 2 lounges and 1 processor. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There's a total of 15 altogether.
So do all of these applications have the same procedure when one is to apply?
Yes, ma'am. As far as getting the clearances from other regulatory agencies, yes.
All of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I know I just recently found out just through this, it did not make the newspaper, but through your testimony here that you have 1 licensed processor.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason why there's only 1?
Nobody else has applied.
No one else has applied?
To my knowledge, no, ma'am.
Okay. You mentioned about good versus right based
Yes,
on your
ma'am.
decision.
Yes, ma'am.
What's a good decision?
Depending on what the subject matter is or what the issue is, example would be
Our example will just be cannabis.
okay. I have a decision where do I approve another producer license? Right decision, go ahead and approve it. We're going to make money, the government. We're going to have another business. They're going to employ some people. Good decision, maybe we should hold back a little bit because it's going to kill what we currently have.
Okay. Thank you for that. Do you think we're oversaturated as far as production licenses and retail licenses are concerned?
That's what we're trying to find right now. And again, part of the what we've inherited again was that there was no system of tracking. So basically, we cannot track from seed to sell.
Okay. Do you have that system currently now?
We've been looking at acquiring one
Mm-hmm.
and using again our special funds.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Commissioner Iguel as well as Commissioner Hofschneider,
Mm-hmm.
I've given them the authority, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and pursue these, look for these things, and see what best can we get out of this.
Okay.
We've
So,
even reached out to BCEQ,
Mhm.
trying to write on the Farm Bill.
Mhm.
The Farm Bill allows anything under 0.3% THC to be sold, transported publicly and everything because it's considered hemp. Even if it's marijuana. Marijuana seeds
Mhm.
are now considered hemp. So you
Mhm.
can basically go to TSA with marijuana seeds in your pocket
Mhm.
and nothing's going to happen because it contains less than 3% THC. The way the Farm Bill was written is that if the state does not have a licensed certified lab to test these products, such as edibles and so forth, that the Department of Agriculture, which is under DLNR, would then be the one to assume that.
Okay, thank you. So how do you currently track?
We currently track by sales, which is required under self-reporting in the legislation.
Okay.
And
Has it
also,
worked for you?
It's worked to the point where we at least have a number to work with versus we just didn't know.
Right.
But at least now we have a number where we can say, based on the information we receive from the licensees, that the CNMI currently sits anywhere from 3 to 4 months worth of inventory.
Okay, got it.
Now we at least have a approximate or guesstimate number, maybe, if you want to call it that.
Mhm.
But at least now we have something versus we didn't have nothing to go on to begin with.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know, and that's quite reassuring. My next question is, I noticed that there are certain retailers that just take cash, and there's others that take credit card.
Mhm.
How is this possible?
Under
And
the-
how is that transaction done? Because it's still classified as a drug. So local FDIC banking institutions will not accept any money from real cannabis retailers. Sorry, my words are kind of. So how is that possible?
Currently, the legislation, federal regulation, is that banks will not accept drug money. Hence why you have cannabis businesses dealing with cash. The federal government even realizes this. Again, recently passed the House of Representatives is called the Safe Banking Act.
Hmm.
Okay, because what they've realized is you have these shops in the mainland that are sitting on millions and millions of cash
Hmm.
because the banks won't take them,
Hmm.
that are now targeted
Hmm.
for violent robberies and so forth. So the federal government recognizes that, and now they're working to address that. Here locally, again, if a business wants to accept cash, we're not the I'm sorry to say, we're not the business police or the cash police or how the transaction is done. If they find a bank or a credit card company that would allow them to use credit cards, again, that's between them and that financial institution.
So what you're saying is,
We have
the-
no jurisdiction over it.
so what you're saying is that the retailers can now accept credit card. Is that what you're saying?
There's actually one retailer that actually publicly put it out
I know.
that they're now accepting credit cards.
Okay. So how do you track the revenue on that?
We track the revenue based on what they pay coming out of revenue tax, real-time collection with Mr. Richard Santos.
Real-time collection.
He's the supervisor for what is it? I say real-time as in that's when they go there with their receipts
Mm-hmm.
and they pay.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we track it.
So if I go in there and I want to buy some sticks or joints, if that's what you want to call it, right? And I have a credit card. That credit card machine is not a local merchant issued credit card,
Mm.
right? So how is that being swiped? How is a credit card being swiped if the merchant machine, which is supposed to be provided by the local banking institution, is not a merchant machine issued by the local FDIC bank because they will not accept it. So how are they conducting this transaction?
Again, ma'am, if the legislation does not give us that authority, then maybe that's where we come again to this body and address it, where make it mandatory for these businesses that are licensed, that in order for you to use credit card machines, your machines has to be hooked up to rev and tax. Right now, the legislation doesn't give us any authority in that.
Okay, but wouldn't that be one of your good decisions or right decisions in helping to safeguard and ensure a successful cannabis industry?
Again, I cannot make a decision that I don't have any authority to make over, because I don't have the authority to enforce it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I yield.
Thank you, Representative Flores. Any other questions from members? Recognize Representative Diego Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Palacios, again for accepting the nomination. You mentioned about a possible or was an idea of decreasing 25% the fees. Is there what's the rationale behind that?
The decreasing of the fee that gave, again, the legislation 21, the amended legislation 2105, public law, specifically states that the Cannabis Commission can increase the fee with no limit, but and at the same time, we can decrease the fee no more than 25%. So we look at that and we say, how do we expand this industry and get it into Rhoda and Tinian? Let's bring down the fees, because the fees, it's not, a producer license would require you to pay $6,000 a year, or every October, rather, not a year, but every October. And you would have to plan or pay for a canopy space of 750 square foot. Rhoda, 750 square foot, that's way too much for the market. So one of the things that we're looking at is, again, when I mentioned micro producers, to allow micro producers. So to incentivize what we have right now, to go to Rhoda and open up a retail shop, it's going to cost you 25% less. And the reason why we made it specific to the 3 municipalities and not Saipan is because if we allow it here in Saipan, then what's going to happen is there's no incentive for anybody in the industry to expand it to Rhoda.
Maybe can be like specific to Tinian and Rhoda.
It's specific only.
Okay.
The fees are specific, and it's only applicable to the municipalities of Rhoda, Tinian, and the Northern Islands. The Saipan fees, structure, and everything remains status quo, the same. And that, again, is so that we can entice growth in the other municipalities.
Okay, thanks for that. One more. The cannabis tracking system, is that something that's feasible for our industry here? I know it's costly. It's looking about maybe 100,000, right, for the system itself. I'm not sure about the maintenance costs or what, but is that feasible for here, for us, for this industry?
It's feasible. Yes, it is. It's feasible. It's feasible.
Okay. One more. So I'm actually gonna we plan to introduce legislation. It's what do you call this? That what account was that again? The 1501.
Yeah, 1501 series.
Yeah. So
B,
we do plan
C, and
to
S.
introduce legislation to appropriate that money to the commission, and before we offer that to any other department or agency, let's take care of the commission first.
Yes. And like I said, and again, I just for clarity, when I say we want to make sure, and our spending plan, which was something that was we developed prior to my exit, was having the designated chair, Chairman Igual or Commissioner Igual, go to the legislature, speak to the oversight chair, get his guidance, see what he has to say, speak with the other legislators, present this, and everything is detailed. There were some things initially that were put there. Again, we inherited $45,000 for a brand new car. No, take that out. We're not going to buy a brand new car. We're not going to use $45,000 to buy a brand new car. Take that out. And we did. So we streamline even that. Again, understanding that when everything is said and done, we owe we all get the same money from the same pot, and we can call it, account this and account that, but it all comes out to the same pot. And I understand that. I've been with as a executive with Gulf Guam, and I understand that when everything is done, all this money just comes out from the same pot, and we can call it whatever we want to call it, but it still comes out from the same pot. So when I say that, again, I know DPS. One of the things that comes to mind would be they're not getting hazardous pay. Why is that? Maybe if we can get their narcotics unit some financial support, pay for their training, pay for an additional canine unit, something. So we're looking at using whatever excise money so that it can, again, benefit the community as it's intended. Another recipient that I'm looking at would be substance abuse. Substance SAPAR with STAR or SAR. I'm sorry. Yeah, substance abuse in Marpi. I'm sure they're gonna new furniture. I don't know, new TV for the clients that are there. Something. In other words, this money was never intended for us to just sit on, because that's what it is. It's there. Why aren't we using it? Why are we tapping in the general fund for our office expenses when we have this money sitting there that's specifically supposed to be for this, which is 1501B, that's currently sitting as of December 31st of 2023 at $97,000, specific for just office use. Why aren't we using that? I know I've gotten calls from other agencies for something as small as water for the office. Director Nogis gave me a call about a month and a half ago, and he was asking if we can help them at least pay for their office water bill. I told him, how much is it? $8 a week, $32 a month. Okay, we'll put you in our account. We'll have them deliver the 5-gallon water down to your office. In return, you guys take care of our yard maintenance. So we traded it off. And again, so it's again understanding that we can be the Cannabis Commission, but we're still a part of the CNMI government. And if one of our agencies are not providing services or whatnot, all that means is that our people are not getting some of the services that they deserve and expect. And if it's something as little as paying $32 so that the office can have water, so that when the kids come there to utilize the wood, there's at least cold water for them to drink. So that when other members of our Refalowes community, brothers and sisters, go there, there's something for them to drink. Because that is something that they expect at the very least from our government. So we're not just looking at this, and I'm not just looking at this as I'm the Cannabis Commission, I'm the chairman, and I got all this money. No, we're one government, and we have money. And we're going to use and take what we need, and whatever's left over, let's put it to good use. Because having it sit in the account is not doing anybody any good.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Camacho, for your questions. I now recognize Representative BJ Atto.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Palacios, thank you for accepting the nomination again. But you mentioned something about the 25%, and you can decrease by not more than 25%,
Yes, sir.
right? You can increase up to the maximum.
Yes, sir.
And you guys are the CNMI Cannabis Commission, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we got to make sure that this is clear, that no matter how we break it down, Saipan, Rhoda, Tinian, or the Northern Islands, is still in the CNMI.
Yes, sir.
We cannot decrease a specific municipality from the other because you're the CNMI.
Yes, sir.
Essentially, what the recommendation would be is going back to the enabling legislation and creating the industry, but allowing the municipalities to come up with their own license fees. Because technically, right now, you cannot change the rate for the specific municipality from another because you are the CNMI Cannabis Commission, and the CNMI encompasses all the islands. You can't go and separate the cost for doing business on Rhoda or Tinian or the Northern Islands separate from Saipan. When you go down 25, you're going to go down 25 for everybody in the CNMI. You can't specify to one senatorial district. That's one thing we got to understand. What we can do is create local laws now to mirror the Cannabis Commission, but yet those businesses that decide to open on the different municipalities still have to pay the Cannabis Commission of the CNMI, then turn around and pay the Cannabis Commission of whichever municipality. You can't decrease the cost of doing business by municipality when you are the CNMI Cannabis Commission, because you have to make sure that everybody's equally represented at that cost. You take the poker industry, for example. The cost for poker in the CNMI is $6,000. Every single municipality pays $6,000. Then you create a local level. Saipan itself, Saipan Northern Islands is an additional $6,000. Rhoda and Tinian is at $4,000. That we can do, but you cannot change that the cost unless it's across the board in the CNMI. So that's maybe something that we can consider from our end to allow the industries for each municipality. They can technically do it right now, but it'll cost them more money because they would have to pay you guys and they would have to pay their commission as well. And the other thing that you brought up, and that's not really a question, I just wanted to share that with you so that you don't go and you change it. You're technically breaking the law that's allowing you guys to come up with costs.
Okay. Whenever we meet, we always have the presence of our legal counsel, Attorney Keisha Blaze. And in those discussions, when we came up with that provisions or that policy, she was present, and with her guidance is that we have the authority of the Cannabis Commission. So we went with that, what the legal counsel had advised us. So it wasn't a decision that we made amongst just ourselves arbitrarily or by our own interpretation of the legislation. We actually had legal counsel gave us that advice.
Sure, and that's fine. You know, every legal counsel will have their own legal opinion to issues, but maybe something you can bring back to Counsel Blaze. Ask her specifically if Rhoda is in the CNMI, if Saipan's in the CNMI, if Tinian's in the CNMI, the Northern Islands in the CNMI. If the answer is yes, then you guys are the CNMI. You can't separate the fact that you're in Garapan and in Capitol Hill, right? There's no difference in business license for Joten and Susupi than Joten and Cagman, right?
Right.
So maybe that's one way for her to understand that the cannabis industry is the cannabis of the CNMI. It's not the cannabis of separate municipalities. No. So, and then the other question, the other point that I asked you guys, you brought up the point of we're trying to amend the legislation to allow the funds to go to you guys, correct? That's one of the asks of the commission, because it's unfortunate that the original Enabling Act gives you guys the funds, but you have to come to the legislature to appropriate the funds.
Yes.
That's how it's currently written right now.
Yes.
We understand that the industry needs to grow, so we need to be flexible with that. We need to make sure that you're sustainable, unlike another commission that's not sustainable right now, to give you guys those funds so you can be sustainable and move forward. But when you start talking about giving money to DPS, and nothing against DPS and nothing against the Indigenous Affairs or the Carolinian Affairs offices, you might be walking on really thin ice there, because these guys are recipients of federal funds, and there's one thing that we cannot commingle those funds, no? So we got to be very, very sensitive in that sense. But we can't allow you guys to just we're going to amend the law to give you guys the funds, but yet you're going to become like the Santa Claus and help out. That's where we're going to have a bigger problem.
Yeah. Now, just to
There's-
clarify, sir, when I say to share with other entities, that would be that again. That's the house's uh, 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 responsibility, appropriations. We're not going to say the leftover give it to this. I mean, if the house feels that they want to give it to this, then the house that has that authority, and that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, but
What I meant is that we don't want it to just be sitting there when we know that it could be used, is basically what I'm saying.
and I absolutely agree, right? The unfortunate thing is if they give the funds to you guys for the operations and the functions of the office, this is a new industry. We want it to grow. But when you're having excess amount of money, that doesn't mean that you just become,
Yes,
it's not Christmas every day.
Yes.
But if we're going to give you guys the funds and you guys utilize it for the functions of the office and the commission itself, then that makes sense. Right? Come back to the legislature to appropriate, let's say $200,000. Now, would it be realized as external funds on beyond the $200,000 of the governor? That's another challenge that we have to face. But if we're able to give you guys the funds, utilize the funds, you send us your expenditures and how much is in your account, then we understand that the commission can pay for itself. We don't have to worry about them in the annual budget. Now we can take those monies and move it somewhere else, right?
Yes, sir. And I mentioned that structurally we're also looking at catching up with a lot of the mandates structurally in an organization. Standard operating procedures. One of the standard operating procedures that has to be developed is the expenditure. We submit to the legislature an expenditure plan, identifying how much money for what it's to be used for. The standard operating procedure that will be developed is going to entail an accountability back to the legislature so that we can say that we ask, hypothetically, $10,000 for CUC payment. We use the $10,000 and here's our CUC receipts. We're now going to reprogram $2,000 from the training fund, as an example, because we still have 2 months left for this for our CUC bill before the fiscal year. So we're looking at those different things, that these are all the things that we also need to implement and put together, because it was something that was mandated that should have been implemented 6 months after the initial passage, or 60 days rather, I'm sorry, after the initial passage of 2066. It's been 3 years, 4 years since its passage. So again, we're going back to, we make it a point as commissioners when we meet is, hey, so what did you find else in 2066 that we can address? Oh, this and this and that. So we're looking at it also where I mentioned in the initial hearing, ambiguities. So we're looking at these ambiguities in the legislations, the enabling legislation, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. All we're trying to look to see is get rid of the mud that's stuck to that wheel, so that this vehicle that is the Cannabis Commission can have a smoother ride, a safer ride.
Yeah, and that would be in the sense that you guys have control of the funds,
Yes.
right? So it's important that we get the funds to you guys, so you guys have the access to move these stuff and move forward. You guys also, in the enabling legislation, allows you guys to promulgate rules and regulations,
Yes.
correct? So to the question that Rep. Marissa brought up, just through your rules and regulations, I believe that you guys can include that in your rules and regulations, that in order to do business within the CNMI, and if you're going to be able to use credit cards or debit cards, that it has to be from a banking institution within the CNMI. that you can include in your rules and regulations. We don't need to come back to the legislature and pass that kind of stuff in here because it's easier for you guys to address it. Now you have 29 members in this two chambers have to agree, and then you create lobbyists and all that kind of stuff outside trying to fight against it because they don't want to do business with the banking institution of CNMI or bypass FDIC rules and regulations.
And again, just to not to saying that there's any disagreement. I totally agree with what you're saying. But now I go back to when you were talking about we cannot come up with policy or rules or regulations based on reducing the fee to these municipalities, because that was the same explanation for justification from legal counsel. The enabling legislation gives you guys the authority to come up with rules and regulations for the industry, the CNMI cannabis industry. Rhoda is a part of the CNMI. So we come up with a rule or a regulation that says we're going to reduce the fee specific to Rhoda only. So that's what I'm saying. That when legal counsel gave that to us in that explanation and in that context, it's like, okay, if you're saying that we have the authority to come out with rules and regulation, and we can apply this as a rule or a regulation that for Rhoda and Tinian and the Northern Islands, based on the enabling or the amended legislation 2105, that we can decrease the fees by 25%. And you're saying that we can do it because it says we have the authority to do it. So that's why we did it. And again, now you're coming back with what you're saying. Now it seems like it's two hands basically holding, but they don't really want to hold hands, if you will. And then again, that's why I'm saying the ambiguities.
But
And that's what I mentioned.
to your point, you're creating rules and regulations for the CNMI.
Yes.
You're not creating fees and fines. That's the big difference. The fees are created from this side, then allows you guys to move up or down. It doesn't tell you to move up or down only for this and only for this, right? It's the entire CNMI. Promulgating the rules and regulations, you can do that. You can tell them that you can only go to FDIC banking, for example, but you can't turn around and change the fee for the banking institution. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
so the fees in itself is not going to change. It's going to be you guys to change, but you cannot separate by municipality. That would come on the local law level. Once the local law exists for the different municipalities, then okay, that's an additional cost of doing business in a specific municipality. Unless what Council Blaze is trying to tell the central government or the legislature is remove the Cannabis Commission. I mean, the Cannabis Commission centralized as a CNMI cannabis, like the Board of Education, for example, that states what kind of business you can do in the CNMI. Then allow each municipality to come up with its own fees and regulations. That, okay, makes sense. But when there's already a fee stated within the law, it's a CNMI law. You need to get to the next level, then that's what changes the fee structure. Oh. But
Yes,
thank you
yes,
again.
sir.
And thank you for accepting the nomination.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Madam President.
Thank you, Representative Vijay Atto. I recognize Representative Danita Yangtamay.
Good afternoon, and thank you for accepting your renomination.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just came up with this thing because you keep talking about appropriation and funding and all those millions and millions of dollars going into your office. Where do you keep them?
The account, depending on who you talk to, whether it's the Treasury, OMB, or Revenue Tax, as of October 31st of 2023, 1501B had $97,000 in it. 1501S had $374,000 in it. And I found this out while I was talking to them that there's a 1501C that has $392,000 in it. So depending on who you talk to, our special funds currently has in the different accounts a minimum of $471,000 all the way up to $1.16 million as of October 31st, 2023.
Okay, now we know where to go to. And yes, yes. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
yes, you believe in growth, and you just started with this very new industry, but you're really working very hard. I can see with the support that you're getting from these people sending us letters and all those stuff, and those who spoke. Thank you.
ma'am.
I yield.
Thank you, Representative Yang Tamay. I recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
Thank you again, Madam President. Quick one. Is it illegal to transport cannabis within islands?
Oh, that's a question actually that the federal court system doesn't want to touch. A perfect example is the San Juan Islands off of Washington State. Locally, you can transport. Locally, based on the local law, you can transport because it's still the same state. The CNMI is still the same entity. The problem you're going to have is because of its Schedule 1 designation, is finding a boat captain who's licensed and regulated by the U.S. Coast Guard to allow you to put it on his boat, or finding a pilot who is, again, regulated by FAA to allow you to put it on their plane. That's where the problem is. A lot of the cases that are pending or came out of it ended up just being, I guess, died, if you will, because the federal government goes back to the initial directive from President Obama as far as enforcement, which is deprioritize marijuana investigations. So basically what they do is they'll take the marijuana load from the boat coming out of Wimbley Island, confiscate it, suspend the boat captain's license. Nobody pays a fine. Nobody goes to jail. That's the only thing that's coming out of it right now.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure. So here, you know what I was thinking? Maybe you should enlist the army of drones.
They're covered by FAA also.
It was a thought.
Thank you, sir. A good thought, but I appreciate it. But they're
Thank you.
covered by FAA.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Representative Camacho. Recognize Senator Karina Magofnia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few follow-up questions. And it may sound funny when you state that, depending on who you ask,
Mhm.
The account balance for this account is this, account balance for this is this, and this, so forth, right? And it does sound kind of funny, but it's actually kind of concerning that we cannot get a consistency between finance, OMB, and whoever else that's involved in tracking and monitoring these monies, because at all times they should be on the same page. And so, from your standpoint, I mean, wouldn't you want to know the exact amount versus one says this and the other says that?
Yes, ma'am. And again, we've reached out with Department of Finance, Revenue Tax, Treasury. We've reached out to them and we're sharing this information with them. Myself personally with Miss Connie Aguttu at the Treasurer's office, and I was sharing with her that here's the document from OMB. Here's the account number, 1501B, 97,000. Here's the account 1501S, 374,000. It's 471,000. She goes, well, I'm looking at my system and you guys have 1501C. I'm like, what is that? Well, you guys have 692,000. I'm like, wait. So yes, it is concerning, but I think also a lot of it has to do with what the Vice Speaker BJ Atto, Congressman Atto has said, in the commingling of what is drug money. Is the BGRT that Cana Marianas pays, can that be commingled into the general fund? Because it's marijuana money,
Right.
it's drug money. And I think really that's where a lot of and what you brought up, it's not unique to the CNMI.
Mhm.
It's also the same struggles that the industry nationwide is going through. That's why there's a big push within the U.S. Congress for the Safe Banking Act.
Sure, and I completely understand the dynamics of that, right? But it just concerns me that OMB and finance just cannot get their numbers straight. I mean, has there been any explanation as to why the variances between the balances on the accounts?
Uh, the explanation I got is here's the account, here's the amount, and I'm
I just
looking.
don't understand why there is no concern for finance, especially, to reconcile those accounts and come to a true number that both the OMB, Treasury, and all the other involved departments, right, to have the same number, because that's a problem. I mean, if we can reconcile one account, what does that tell us about the many accounts that the government has?
Yes,
Right?
I
It's not
completely
on
agree.
you.
No,
I'm
I
just I'm
completely
trying to
agree.
point this out because this is a huge concern that the CNMI government needs to address. We need to get a good reconciliation of all the government accounts so that we truly know at the end of the day what those balances are, and especially with the budget season coming around the corner, like, that's important. And
Yes,
for a
ma'am.
finance secretary, I would think that that's a high priority. So I'm just throwing that out there. And now that you've brought up the BGRT, since those monies are being generated, those revenues are being generated through marijuana, do you know where those monies are being deposited at?
1501C
Like,
is
which bank is
okay.
that?
1501B and 1501S comes from licenses, application fees.
Okay, so specifically to BGRT, where are those monies
That
being?
falls under, again, I never knew this, but 1501C.
And which bank is that? Do we know?
I don't know, ma'am. But it's 1501C, and that's what covers, or that's what funded.
And how much was in 51OC again?
692, and that's from BGRTs and excise tax.
Oh my, I mean, that's a significant amount of money to be sitting in a bank that's not FDIC. Should something happen, right? We have no insurance whatsoever to recoup or recover those monies should something happen, for goodness sake. But I understand the reason being, right? Because there's just no other mechanism or vehicle at this point to deposit those monies in a secure financial institution. But that's a lot of money. And hopefully, we can find a better solution for that. The $6,000 that's due every October,
Yes, ma'am.
that's across the board, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And regardless of when you apply for the license
Yes,
and
ma'am.
issue. So if you were issued in September, you would still have to pay the $6,000 come October.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's no prorate whatsoever.
No, ma'am. And that's one of the we've spoken with the chair, and of course, again, talking with the invested stakeholders, the licensees. Is there a way where we could do this? Looking at it from a policy standpoint, when we say we want to grow the industry, if like you said, if it's already August,
Right. Why bother?
I'm not gonna I'm not going to give you my $6,000 for my fee when I can wait till October.
Right.
We just lost 3 months worth of revenue, potential revenue.
Mm-hmm.
We just lost it.
Yes.
And if there were 6 people that were caught in that, well, you multiply
Yes.
that by 6. So those are the things that we're looking at, where it's like, just make it a year-round cycle, like every other license. When it expires on this year, because then it opens up the industry even more,
Mhm.
and it gives it that growth potential. Versus right now, it becomes a hindrance the closer you are to October.
So are you saying there's a plan somewhat in the future to possibly change that, so that, because it's very discouraging for people who
Yes,
are trying
ma'am.
to get into the business, right? Like, why would you want to, pay in August when the next fee is due in October? And if they don't pursue that, then the government, the whole entire economy just lost that business, like you said, 3 months worth of revenue times how many applicants there were that were potentially considering and opening a business. So that's definitely something that I think maybe you guys should consider changing so that it's a lot more inviting for potential applicants.
Yes, ma'am. And as far as the changing it, it's specific in the legislation that it's every October. So
Oh, so we would, okay.
so it'll have to be
Okay.
coming out from. It'll have to come out from
So
this
a
body.
possible amendment to the.
Yeah,
Okay.
we cannot come out with that
Okay.
policy.
Understood,
It has to be
understood.
from this body.
Okay. And then you also talked about incentives for the other municipalities, right? Tinian and Rhoda. Are there any producers and suppliers currently on Tinian and Rhoda?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I am 100% in support of expanding, right, to the other municipalities. And if the incentive for Rhoda and Tinian is to reduce the fees by, no more than 25%, right? Even if that was to happen, the transportation, right, because there are no growers, producers, or suppliers on those islands, they would have to place their orders from Saipan to deliver to those islands. That would still make it an issue, because again, like you said, they would have to find a pilot or a captain to be able to transfer those products to Tinian and Rhoda.
Well, that's why I mentioned about micro producers, to allow micro producers in those municipalities, because the micro
Oh,
producers
okay.
are limited to 25
Got
marijuana
it.
plants.
Okay.
So they don't need to pay.
But I
For
mean, in the
700
case
square foot
where
of-
nobody wants to produce on those islands, what would be the point of a retailer opening up on those islands if they don't have the local producers to supply?
There are
Other-
local producers.
Oh, there-
They're just not licensed. There are local producers, as in there. In other words, it's illegally grown based on the law. It's illegally grown.
Okay.
It's not regulated. They're not licensed. But how do we get them to license?
Yes.
Is we entice it and allow micro producers for those
I see.
municipalities
I see.
and keep it away from Saipan. And the reason why is the population difference. The population, as far as users for Saipan, roughly about 11,000 that would buy marijuana at least once a year. About 7,500 that would buy marijuana at least once a week.
Mm.
In Rhoda, you're talking about an overall captive market
Right.
of about 300 to 350 people. The only way for that market to generate any kind of funds is to do a micro producer amendment
Okay.
to allow it, because it's currently not allowed. So now we can have a cooperative, if you will, where you have one person that opens up the retail shop, has 10 people growing 25 marijuana plants each. That's 250 plants that now can be sold retail and taxed and everything else.
So would it be safe to assume that prior to a retailer opening up, that the commission will ensure that there are producers on those particular municipalities so that they have the supply that they need to open their shop?
Right now they could, but it's just too cost prohibitive, and the area required is a minimum of 700 square foot canopy space.
Right now, they are permitted.
Yeah, they're permitted under the current legislation. They can,
Right,
but it's just too. It's
but you
just too
have
cost.
the local producers who are in those municipalities are illegally growing the plants. So they would have to get their supplies from Saipan.
No,
No?
when I say
Oh.
illegal producers, these are the guys that grow 10 or 15 plants in their backyard.
Oh,
They're not. There's no industry as we describe it, or as we describe what an industry is, which is regulated. There's policies, there's procedures,
Mhm.
regulations. So we're trying to bring it to the outer municipalities,
right.
and to entice that, let's recognize that what is the one thing that's keeping them away. It costs too much money to pay $6,000 for a canopy space that I'm not going to use to serve a market that's only going to make
I
me
see.
X number
Okay.
of dollars.
Okay.
So how do we bring this all together and find a middle ground? That one of the first pieces was, let's incentivize
Mhm.
people to open, reduce the fees. The next one is let's allow them and take away that restriction for them to have to pay for canopy space that they don't need,
Mhm.
and just have them do micro productions. So now you actually have an industry, but instead of one centralized grow point, you have a grow point that's spread out.
Got it.
So you have more participation, if you will,
Sure.
in that collective approach.
Okay, great. And that's always a great thing, right? We're always trying to expand our economy and also share the wealth with our sister islands. So that's great. We talked about the tracking system being feasible. And do you mean feasible as in acquiring the system itself, or system plus the implementation, which would also include other, I don't know, other departments, right? Such as revenue and tax. I don't know who else would be involved. Commerce, DPS. I don't know. Does that take into consideration all the other required departments or agencies that need to be online with the tracking system?
As far as the tracking system, it'll be again from a lot of the industry as it was set up initially was dependent on trust, input from the or information and data submitted by the
By
licensees,
the licenses.
such as monthly reporting
Mhm.
that's required. How many plants did you plant? How many died? How many became matured? How many was sold? For what amount?
Mhm.
But it's not something where we have a system of our own in place at the grow sites. So it's basically a trust, how it's set up. Would that be something that we would like? Of course. Is it something that I can say is doable? Possible, but I don't think it will be doable, because the only way that you can make it doable is if the government itself controls the growing from seed to distribution. Other than that, we're never going to know how many was planted, other than I planted 90, only 50 matured, and I only sold 10. There's really no way to track that other than what they submit to us. But one of the ways that we can use as a not necessarily a check and balance would be, well, how much was your BGRT? How much was your payroll? Because if you're telling me that you only sold
Mhm.
10 plants, but your payroll says, I mean, your overall expenses for the month says that In order for you to do that, you have to sell
Mhm.
30 plans. Then you need to explain to us how and where did the extra 20 plans magically showed up.
Sure.
So we're looking, again, it's very crude and it's very raw. But we're talking about an industry, again, that's very infant. And again, through no fault of the previous commissioners, when the legislation first passed, it was about 6 months after Typhoon U2. When the first license was issued, it was a month after COVID. So really the focus, I can say, wasn't really there as to we have this industry. We created it. Let's grow it. Let's nurture it. Part of the problem that created is the funds, the special funds. I mean, I wasn't expecting to find any money, but I found money and it's there in that account and it wasn't being used because there was an over-reliance of, well, ARPA was taking care of everything. So even from the financial responsibility
Mhm.
of finding out how much money do we have, what is our inventory, I mean, little things like that. We did an inventory of our office. How many hand sanitizers do we have? How many printers? How many phones? Because there was nothing. So we had to create all these things from scratch, things that were supposed to be in place.
Mhm.
But again, through no fault of their own, because of the super typhoon, COVID, there was just really no focus on it.
Okay.
And when we came on board, and again, I thank the staff, I thank the commissioners, because they really put in there's a lot of diligence that go into this. And I always make it a point to tell them and remind them, everything and anything that's good, it's because of you guys.
Okay.
If it goes sideways, I'm the chairman. It's because of me.
Well, thank you for taking responsibility and ownership of everything and anything that happens under your watch, because some people don't. Never mind. Side comment. Last question, I promise. You brought up the topic of the special account, and I was curious to know whether or not that account is restricted or unrestricted.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The special account that you referred to, I think it was 51OC, right? That
Mhm.
has 692,000. Do you know if that account is a restricted account or unrestricted?
Oh, from the way it was explained to me is that based on the enabling legislation, the chairman of the CNMI Cannabis Commission is the only expenditure authority, and to give notice to the legislature for appropriation. That's
Okay.
just that's in 2105
Okay.
and the public law. And that's really just the language. It's just very narrow. But
Mhm.
whether that account, these are, it's finding out all these things that, okay, we have these, we're responsible for this. We need to account for this.
Right.
If somebody asks any questions regarding this account, we need to be able to explain it.
Okay.
And again, we are taking the responsibility. I am taking the responsibility to ensure that let's address these things. Let's
Mhm.
talk to the legislatures. Let's talk to the other entities, finance and so forth, and find out what is going on here. Because we're talking about growing an industry. We are entrusted to grow this industry. The livelihood of 37 of our people depend on it.
And I ask about this particular account because if it is restricted, that would mean that it's restricted to specific types of activities, right? And if it's unrestricted, I'm asking because earlier you had stated that you would love to share the wealth for, if there were any remaining balances in that account and your operations has already been taken care of, that you would be more than happy to share it with other departments who need it, which is very admirable. So I ask whether or not it's restricted or unrestricted, because if it is unrestricted, then that would mean that it could be used to assist like medical referral, maybe.
Those are ambiguities.
right?
in the
Or pay
current
someone's
legislation,
utilities
yes,
or
yes,
water bills,
yes. I mean, personally, I have no problem with it.
Sure.
As long
no.
as I can come here and say that the Cannabis Commission is 100% industry funded.
Mhm.
And
And
here's the
that's why I'm
leftover.
asking, right, whether or not it's restricted or
Yeah.
unrestricted, because that would give you the autonomy to utilize the funds how you see fit. And so I just thought I'd ask. I just want to know.
I wouldn't want that autonomy. No, I wouldn't want that autonomy. I would, again, I respect this body. The legislature has the appropriations responsibility,
Mhm.
and I respect that.
Sure. Just anything excess of 200,000 has to come to the legislature for appropriations. So that's why I'm saying it would give you it would be great if it was unrestricted because it'll give you the autonomy to utilize the funds how you see fit. But anyway, that's all I have, Madam Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Magufnia. I now recognize Representative Marissa Flores.
I promise that it's one. Depending on his answer, there's another one. So I know that Mr. Palacios, thank you. Your answers are very detailed. That's why mine is just very simple, yes or no. And depending on what your answer is, I probably have another question for you. So just with all of the conversation that's been going around about your commission and you as a chairman and now being nominated for this position, and that you've been in there for 5 months already prior to being renominated again, has the commission promulgated its rules on policy and procedure
In regards to what, man? I'm sorry.
in regards to internal policies and procedures, in regards to accepting licenses, timelines, all of that? Has the commission promulgated its internal rules for policy and procedure?
One of the many things that we are working on right now.
So it is currently being worked on right now.
Yes, ma'am.
How long do you think that's going to take before you can finish promulgating your rules?
We're currently in the process of, and we've been trying to get it done since I want to say August, and that is to hire a office coordinator as well as administrative assistant, because right now the only two employees are Miss Natasha Palacios, the executive secretary,
Mhm,
and Mr. Eric Baza,
mhm.
who's the inspector.
Okay, so would another 6 months be reasonable?
Thank you for your generosity.
I'm just
Yes,
asking
ma'am.
that.
Yes,
I didn't
ma'am.
offer it. It
No,
was
no,
a
no. I'm just
question.
saying. I mean, that's a very 6 months is very generous. The one thing
Okay.
again, and I'll go back to the current commissioners, is they have the same passion
Of course.
that let's get this done.
Of course.
They see what it can be. Let's
Correct.
get it done.
So, and the reason why I asked that is because right now you're kind of just, it's on an as needed basis, right? You're taking the law and you are 100% following the law because you are a good and passionate person that can lead his team to do the right thing, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so with that being said, every day that there are no rules and procedures in place, policy and procedures in place, every day it's an at-risk situation because
ma'am.
anything can be challenged at that point, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman, for your question. I'm sorry, not Chairman yet. I guess we're almost ready to vote. But thank you so much for that. I think that's important to note. And I think that everybody who is a stakeholder, including those applying for the licenses, know that there is no internal policy and procedure. And every day that that's not there places this commission at risk for not being fair and just when applications come in and to be determined for approval or disapproval, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Flores. I recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
I am not going to have you speak because I know you're going to have to go to church and sing. So I don't want you to lose your voice. At your first hearing, I asked you if you would make sure that senior citizens get a discount. Well, I want to thank you. And not only is it senior citizens, but it's also veterans who are getting discounts. So thank you for that. And with that said, Madam President, I'm ready to vote.
Any other questions from the members? I do just have a few clarification. We provided you a copy of the centric report
Yes, ma'am.
as of fiscal year 2023. And if you go on the first page, second to the last paragraph, it talks about the division is responsible for monitoring and observing marijuana applicants and business establishment activities, as well as homegrown marijuana registrants, and report incidents or other deviations from the Cannabis Act and the rules and regulations. And if you move on to page 3, on the top left corner, second sentence, in parentheses, it says Commission is awaiting applicant's request to schedule an inspection. I was just wondering, why would the commission be waiting out for the applicant to request for an inspection when you already have a statute that allows you to go out there and enforce? Quick question, quick answer. You don't have to give us an expansive explanation.
The applicant, because of their status not being licensees, we don't have the authority, if they were licensees already, for us to go into an establishment and do a compliance inspection or a building safety inspection for that matter.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So that takes us to page 2 on the bottom portion of the eccentric report, cannabis licensing applications pending. I'm not sure if that's a 6 or an 8. If you do the addition on the top, applications received, I add that up to 8. I'm going to assume that perhaps maybe on the bottom sentence that's 8 pending. And in parentheses, commission is awaiting submission of incomplete documents from applicants. Is that still the situation right now with
Yes,
those
ma'am.
applicants?
Yes, ma'am. And part
Okay.
of that, part of those documents that are missing, again, these are something that are beyond control, our control rather, is one of the biggest issues that have always come up in applicants is they're waiting for zoning. And
They're waiting for zoning.
yes, ma'am, or they're waiting for business license. So the way we addressed it, and again with legal counsel, is if they want to submit the application, we'll go ahead and accept it pending the submission of these permits. We can even go as far as issue you your license. You just can't open your business because zoning can shut you down or business license can shut you down. So we're trying to distance ourselves and, because at one point we were the zoning police, basically. But it's something that we have no control of.
Thank you for that response. I'm glad the governor's representative is here to hear that statement. And I would encourage the two bodies to organize a meeting so that we don't prolong the waiting of applicants. So that we could start moving forward with licensing these establishments that want to do business, and so that we could achieve the projection of revenues for this particular industry, currently generating between 1.2 and 1.3 million dollars, potential to generate $10 million based on your statement earlier, Mr. Palacios. Moving on onto your centric report, page 2, member on second column, it says vacant. Is that still the issue?
I'm sorry, where are you at, man?
Page 2 on the top column, middle column. Member, it says vacant.
My pages are not numbered, so I'm not.
Yeah, they're not numbered based on from your office, so maybe your office can number it next time
Yes,
so you could
ma'am.
follow.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It says member is vacant. So is that particular position still vacant? And if you can't see it, that's okay. I'm just reading it out from the centric report. The governor's representative is here. Maybe they could look into that. And if that is still vacant, perhaps maybe a nominee will be coming soon. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Palacios. Moving on to the same column on 3, under management, it says acting managing director. Is that person still acting?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, I just want to make sure. I know we're in fiscal year 24, so this is last year's centric report, and the fiscal year is just in the first quarter of the beginning of FY 24, and this report has just been recently generated, and so I'm not too sure whether that person who's holding the position was still acting at the time the report was generated.
Are
And
you
was
talking
it
about Mr.
within
Baza?
FY23, right? So anyways, FY24 is coming up. Maybe that acting word would disappear.
Yes, ma'am. Are you talking about Mr. Baza, ma'am?
Am I talking about who?
Mr. Baza, Eric Baza?
Well, I'm looking at your report, right? So
No,
I just wanted
Eric-
clarification.
Yeah, we've hired a managing director, Mr. Michelodi Evangelista, and that was effective October 1st, 2023.
All right. So that will be the new fiscal year's report coming up on the
Yes, ma'am.
centric. Okay, thank you. I know that Representative Flores had asked a question about swiping of cards. And obviously, that's a merchant transaction. And oftentimes, merchant machines are governed through the regulatory processes of banking institutions that would issue those merchant machines. And so I'm wondering, in terms of, I know you guys are working on a tracking system to follow the money. And with today's technology, blockchains, digital currency, which banking institution was asked, is it FDIC insured or not? Where all this money is going through, and how are we tracking it with respect to the generation of revenues that we want to make sure that we shut off the bleeding if that is already happening as we speak today. And my recommendation to your commission is to look into this. I have been made aware that there are establishments that are actually transacting through digital currency. And maybe that could be something that you could look at and see whether, and this would involve the other regulatory enforcement agencies with respect to tracking business gross revenue taxes that are possibly, again, bleeding out of the Commonwealth and are not being captured with respect to revenue. And so that's something for the commission to look into and pursue the findings. My other question would be audit reports, independent audit reports from established, outlets, producers, whatever they are, with respect to their licensees. Have you been getting those reports with whomever is falling within that particular time frame right now? If it's calling out in the act itself,
What we're
that
getting,
a audit report is required to be submitted to the commission.
what we're getting, ma'am, are the monthly submission report that's required.
Okay, that's a
what-
monthly report, and my question is an audit report, which is
No,
an
ma'am.
independent audit. And then the reason why I asked the question is because if we're measuring revenue collection for the Commonwealth, we want to measure business valuation versus sales. And if we don't know, because we do not have a current tracking system, and it's based on whatever verbalized from the establishment, is simply that is. But it could be that it's short report, and the Commonwealth is not collecting what is actually due with respect to revenue. And that's something that I would like for your commission to look into, just so that we start closing the loopholes of whatever we have in terms of bleeding of revenue, because it seems like the narrative that we hear every day is that there's no money.
Mm.
And so if there's no money, then maybe we have a lot of holes that we need to plug, because those holes are just bleeding out money that we can't seem to capture to sustain our ship so that we could start paying people that lost hours. Systemically, we have to admit that it's a broken system. And we're going to give the responsibility to the responsible entities that are generating all of these revenues to start looking at these loopholes and holes that are bleeding out money that is not being captured systemically. That is a responsibility of a responsible government. I look forward to a much more robust reporting next year from the Cannabis Commission. and maybe the 1.2, $1.3 million annual revenue generated is probably going to come in at more than that, and hopefully see a $10 million potential annual revenue. I took some notes on what you were saying, and so expectations are quite high with respect to the industry itself to grow and produce the revenue projections that the commission is anticipating. I heard on you don't have to, I guess, to disclose the establishment that the greatest customer is the Manamco.
Mhm.
What struck me as you were mentioning that, I'm wondering, Manamcos in the Commonwealth, either they're earning a annuity because they're retired, and perhaps maybe additional money, which is Social Security and normal income, or maybe supplemental security on a monthly basis. But it takes me into this conversation again of the tracking of sales. Is it really the Manamco? I don't need you to respond to that question. That I bring it to your attention because I think it merits investigation, review of findings of, is it really the Manamco as a customer base that is the majority of that particular establishment? Nobody knows at this juncture. I look forward to that report of any findings perhaps that you may have in the future. On the last page of your centric report, on the bottom part, in asterisk, for the purpose of reporting, please note that the application and licensing fees collected are not considered revenues generated. These fees are considered regulatory fees that do not reflect the collection of licensees, BGR, cannabis tax, etc. And so I'm going to take that statement into the question on your financials on table A on page 3. Total budget for FY 2023 is 620,604.81. My simple question, based on that statement that I just recently read, are these numbers inclusive of those fees collected from the establishments that are licensed to do business? Or are they not? Or are these, what we're looking at is strictly generated from account 1501B, S, and C of 692,000 based on sales?
To my knowledge, not B and S, because again, those require legislative appropriation.
All right, so this particular money, 620,000, and this is 692,000
Mhm.
under account 1501C
Mhm.
does not include fees based on the centric report that is saying, again, for purposes of reporting, application and licensing fees collected are not considered revenues generated.
Yes, ma'am.
And so more than $500,000 is based on sales.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You can look into your centric report further. Members, any other further question? Ready? I would like to get a motion to prepare the standing committee report. Any member would like to make that motion?
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'd like to make a motion for the SNILD JGO committee to prepare the committee report in support of the nominee, Mr. Jose C. Palacios.
There's a motion for the standing committee report preparation in support of the nomination of Mr. Jose B. Palacios and has been seconded. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Nays. Motion is adopted. Thank you, and short recess, please. We are back from a short recess. So now we're down to item 7 under announcements. Members, do you have any announcements? Just a repeat of what I did say from the last meeting that we had. We still have 2 local bills before our committee, and I will be setting up a meeting for us to dispose of those 2 items. No further announcements. Moving on to item 8. May I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting this afternoon? There's a motion to adjourn, has been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Nays, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you, members.